Hi everyone. There has been an update in regards to a Reddit story by the title of I think my husband fathered his best friend's children and now one of them is attracted to my daughter. If you want to hear the original story, go ahead and check out my previous video. So let's get right into the update. I previously said that I was going to do a secret DNA test, that I had decided on that course of action. In the end, I couldn't go through with it, and now I am regretting that because the window to do so has essentially closed. I just felt it would be out of line for me to do that to another person's child behind their back. Ethnically, that was dicey. I've since consulted with my lawyer as many commenters suggested, and she advised me against doing so because no matter what the results were, it would make me look bad in a potential divorce proceeding. But I really wish I had done it anyways and just not told anyone because I really badly need to know. And I still don't know for sure. Likewise, I wanted to tell Sophie in confidence, but the more I thought about it, even that seemed over the line. Like I had no right to plant such ideas in her mind about her father without even talking to him first. So what I ended up doing was confronting Luke and Amy. Many commenters suggested this as well. I finally told both of them that we needed to have a serious talk. It felt counterproductive to approach just one of them because I figured they would tell the other what had happened in their own words before I could prepare my own. I wanted them both to hear what I had to say. Once all the kids were at school, I laid down all my suspicions and reasons. I made it clear how much I loved both of them, but a combination of clues had led me to notice the similarities between Luke and Amy's children, and I didn't list all of them in the original post. For example, Luke has been a sleepwalker in the past, so have Sophie, Tom, and Adam. I said over and over how much they meant to me and how I didn't want to believe it, but the thought had creeped into my mind in the past, how I had dismissed it before, but now with Tom and Sophie having crushes on each other, it became necessary to pose the question. So I asked if they have ever crossed the line, if Luke had ever been unfaithful, if there was even the slightest possibility that any of Amy's children were his. I was just trying not to cry. Well, they reacted exactly as I would have expected. Their response were perfect and so well rehearsed. I generally can't tell if it was honest emotion or powerful gaslighting. Amy was more upset than Luke, or at least more outrightly upset. She was angry, offended at the accusations. Luke just seemed heartbroken by it. Maybe they were just acting, but I don't know. Somehow they had reasonable response to all of the points I brought up. They asked questions I didn't know how to answer. I never objected to them having alone time before. Why did it suddenly bother me now? Do Amy's children really resemble Luke that much, or are things like hair color pretty basic traits to have in common? The whole family had always treated Amy and her kids as part of our unit, and I had previously commended Luke for stepping up and being a father to Amy's kids since they didn't have one. Why was I now saying it was a bad thing? What exactly did I want them to do? How could I think such a thing about them? Why had I waited so long to say something? Luke was more understanding than Amy. He respected my feelings, or at least he acted like he did. Amy appeared to be more betrayed by what I said. I end up apologizing several times even though I'm not sure I did anything wrong. Luke also apologized for anything he's done to indicate he was unfaithful. I asked Amy more pointedly this time, if not Luke, then who had fathered her children? She snapped back that it was none of my business, and I could tell she was in no mood to get personal or vulnerable with me after my accusations. I'm not proud to say that I lost my temper and said that after everything we had done for her and her children, Such information was not a lot to ask, and perhaps she owed it to us. I regretted the words as soon as I said them, but Amy shouted back that I had never done anything for her, that it was Luke and his parents who kept her afloat all these years, not me. She went on a longer tirade about how I had always acted superior to her, which I don't believe I did, though it's possible that I gave off that vibe unintentionally. Luke did his best to calm her down, but the room was still freight with tension. I don't know, Reddit. I just don't know. It's driving me to the edge of madness. There is a way to be certain, of course, not certain of my husband's fidelity, but of the paternity of Amy's children. So I asked Luke, for my own peace of mind, for the sake of our daughter, and for our family unit, if you can please get a DNA test done, a paternity test. I went on to say that I knew he disliked and distrusted such things, but that I really needed this. I could see the pain in Luke's eyes. Maybe it was an act, but he did seem genuinely hurt that I was asking for this, that him giving me his word that he had always been faithful was not enough for me. But he very reluctantly agreed to participate in the DNA test. Unfortunately, Amy did not, and that's where we hit a roadblock. I was afraid of this. But Amy was furiated at such whole concept and told me in no uncertain terms that I would not be getting samples of her children's DNA, and basically told me to F off for asking, several times in several variations. I pressed Luke, and honestly he was a bit useless, but probably right. He tried to convince Amy, but she wouldn't hear of it, and he kind of shrugged to me when I pushed him for further support, because he can't force her to get the test done if she refuses. That's really a dead end. Trust me, it is. I looked into this quite a bit and consulted with my lawyer. The problem is, Luke could, in theory, petition the court to demand a paternity test for Tom and the others. The issue is that to do this, he'll essentially be claiming he slept with Amy and he believed her children to be his. That would be a version of events he'll be maintaining, but Luke has staunchly insisted that nothing ever happened with Amy, that he never cheated on me. Whether or not he's being honest about this is another story, but he essentially have to go on the record and make a claim that he isn't prepared to make. He is quite certain the children aren't his, and he has no intention of fighting for custody of them. So no judge is going to compel Amy to submit samples of her children's DNA. Tom is also old enough that his consent would be a factor. If both he and Amy refuse to participate in the test, it's unlikely that Luke would have a case. He'll have to target one of Amy's younger children, like say one of the twins. But he doesn't want to do that. He doesn't want to take his best friend to court to prove something that, in his word, he already knew isn't true. Luke is asking me to please just let this go and trust him, because pursuing this will fracture everything, and according to my lawyer, it's not realistic anyways. For Luke to establish paternity, he would need to admit to an affair in the first place, and he's not doing that. And if he did, that would pretty much be all the proof I needed to be certain, even if I needed more in a court case. I pestered him further about Tom and Sophie, insisted that I didn't want them dating. Luke agreed, and apparently Amy still agrees. Luke plans to talk to Tom and activate protective Papa Bear mode. Among other things, he's going to remind Tom that in a couple of months when he turns 18, him being intimate with Sophie will literally be a crime. I wouldn't actually press charges against him, as I know he'll never do anything against Sophie's will, but I'm not above implying the threat. Thankfully, Luke isn't either. I did ask him if he'll be open to potentially swiping a sample of Tom's DNA to do a private paternity test, but he was very hesitant about the idea. Like me, he viewed it as unethical. He also pointed out that if we were to do this and Amy found out, it would mean the end of our friendship with her, most likely. Things are, Luke believes, still a salvageable state where Amy and I could reconcile and become friends again, and I can see how much he wants this to happen. But if I did a DNA test on Tom behind Amy's back and she found out, I think she would hit the roof and I wouldn't entirely blame her. Though I'll be very interested to see the results. Luke ended up going to see Amy and spending the night. What? I know all of you are cringing and throwing up your hands, and trust me, I wasn't happy about it. Yeah, exactly. That was a very long conversation, but he was adamant that he needed to perform damage control, so they spent the night together. With Luke maintaining that nothing happened. I did not sleep a wink and I kept texting him for updates. So far as I can tell, Amy will cool off, but she needs a little time. Luke and I talked things over when he came back the next morning. It was an emotionally fulfilling conversation and we ended up agreeing to take the kids, our kids, not Amy's, to visit their grandparents for a few days. It was an impromptu visit, but we've done it before and they were delighted to have us. I just really wanted our family to spend some time together away from Amy's side of the family, so to speak. I always love getting to see my in-laws. I'll refer to them as Jim, 75 male, and Kat, 67 female. I know Reddit is famous for stories about mother-in-law from hell, but in my life, that couldn't be further from the truth. I feel safe with them, to the point that when they took notice of how distant Luke and I were from each other, I finally relented and confessed my fears. I told them of my anxiety that Amy and Luke were having an affair and that Amy's children might be his. When I told them what I was feeling, Kat just gave Jim this pointed look and did a big dramatic sigh. So, it turns out, Kat has had similar misgivings to mine and generally suspected over the years that Luke and Amy were closer than they've ever admitted, that they had crossed the line in the past. Jim, on the other hand, simply refused to even consider the idea. He has always insisted that Kat is seeing things that aren't there. He maintains that Luke and Amy are like siblings and would never do such a thing. Kat thinks his stance on this is naive and that even if she and Jim had taken Amy in and loved her like a daughter, that didn't mean Luke viewed her as a sister or that she viewed him as a brother. But Jim just continued to insist that this is what they are and always will be. I could tell that he and Kat had already had this conversation before and they kept going in circles, with Kat getting exasperated. She pointed out that surrogate siblings or not, Luke and Amy were not actually brother and sisters. So nothing was stopping them from being physical together if they felt a mutual attraction. At that point, Jim just sighed and walked away from the conversation. So yes, Kat had privately wondered if Amy's children weren't fathered by Luke, which is part of why she has always treated them as her grandchildren, which was never something that I minded, to be clear. I also don't mind that Kat never voiced these concerns to me. She had no proof, and she saw far less of Luke and Amy's closeness in our adult lives than I did. As for the kids, they're doing alright. I don't know what Amy told her children, but I think the general consensus, the official version of the events, is that Amy and I had a fight and need a break from each other. That's what Luke and I told our children, and when pressed for more information, Luke did defend me and shut down the question, saying it wasn't their business. I don't know if Amy kept to that version of events, but my children and her children have each other's phone numbers and social media, so they're presumably still being in contact over the last 2 days. I think my kids would have kept Amy's kids in the loop on the updates, and if Amy had told them anything else significant, they would have relayed that message to my kids. After all, we know Sophie and Tom are very close. I did try and talk to Sophie about that more, but the timing was off because Sophie rejected my consult and interpreted my reinforced reluctance as being attributed to my fight with Amy. She maintained that she wasn't dating Tom. To what degree that's actually true, I don't know. But she was going to remain close friends with him, and while she isn't usually a disobedient child, she made it very clear that she was putting her foot down on this one. And to be fair, I can't really justify trying to separate them or forbid them from being friends. They've known each other for years. Luke has my back on them not being allowed to date, but he wouldn't have my back on them not hanging out anymore. I wish I had a more definitive update. If anything significant happens in the next few days, I can let you guys know. I'm mostly just kicking myself for not having done the secret test, even for my own peace of mind, as now I feel like I'm locked out of the only way to get definitive proof one way or the other. Wow. Let's see what some of the commenters have to say to this. First commenter says, he had to do damage control by staying the night with her. That's because she's his girlfriend. I really don't see any other interpretation of that. A follow-up commenter says, seriously, husband knows wife has been living this belief that he's cheating with friend, and rather than stay with wife to reassure her and do damage control with his wife, he finds it more important to stay with friend to do damage control with her, leaving wife alone all night. That's so gross. I absolutely do not believe Amy and Luke. Amy is being gross and could put this all behind them so easily by just doing the DNA test. She wouldn't even have to tell the kids why. But adamantly refuses, and Amy can't understand OP's thought process or reasoning at all, instead of just explodes, with no good defense other than the gaslighting. Yeah, no. I hope the story is either fake or exaggerated, or OP gets to the truth soon and move on. I totally agree. This is not exactly the update that I was expecting, but I really want to find out what happens next. Will Amy finally relent and actually get the DNA test and put everything behind them? Or will OP continue to fight this uphill battle? I guess we'll find out in part 3, because this is the first update, and the OP does provide a second update. What do you guys think about the Amy situation? Do you honestly believe Amy and Luke? What do you think OP's next step should be? Leave those in the comment. And remember to continue to like and subscribe if you like these type of stories. I'll see you guys later.